The world's most inhumane regimes will now dictate the global rules for human rights. That is, if an election plays out the way many experts are predicting. The countries we're talking about are China, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, Russia and Cuba, labeled as the world's biggest violators of human rights. Now they could be on the board of the UN Human Rights Council. China, Russia and Saudi Arabia are on the verge of a diplomatic victory. Pakistan and Cuba are vying for the remaining spots. The UNHRC, whose job it is to protect human rights around the world, could now fall into the hands of the world's biggest rights abusers. On Gravitas tonight, we'll tell you about the charade that is playing out at the United Nations Human Rights Council. But first, we must take a look at the UN resolution and what it says. Members elected to the Council shall uphold the highest standards in the promotion and protection of human rights. Do China, Russia and Saudi Arabia fit that description? Can you call Cuba and Pakistan guardians of human rights? Now let me tell you how they uphold the highest standards in the protection of human rights. And we'll start with China. Just a week ago, 39 countries around the world had slammed Beijing for human rights abuses against ethnic Uyghurs. They criticized China for its crackdown on Hong Kong's autonomy. Then we have Saudi Arabia. Last year, a United Nations appointed rights investigator blamed Saudi Arabia for the murder of journalist Jamal Khashoggi. She said the murder was an act of quote-unquote international crime. Next is Russia. In March this year, a UN panel said Russia committed a war crime when it bombed Syrian civilian targets. And the less said about Cuba and Pakistan, the better. Two more contenders, both fitting the same description. Both have been named and shamed by the United Nations for rights violations. How can the UN then justify their appointment to the Rights Council board? Here's another question. What is the qualification to be a board member of such a panel? You may be interested in knowing that a country's track record on human rights has nothing to do with this appointment. At the United Nations Human Rights Council, international politics dictates these selections. The problem is with the system itself. The UN Human Rights Council is a subsidiary of the General Assembly. Another interesting point. The UNHRC was set up to replace the UN Commission on Human Rights. What was the need? The Commission had earned a bad reputation for similar reasons. And now the replacement is proving to be just as bad. This council has 47 members. They're all elected for 3-year terms. And these spots are given region-wise. The UN has specified groups, so they have 13 members from Africa, 13 from Asia Pacific, 6 from Eastern Europe, 8 from Latin America and the Caribbean, and the last 7 come from a group known as Western European and other states. The rules are very clear. Members must be picked by election, but rules aren't always followed. Nominations are settled through secret backroom deals. And this time, 15 seats are up for grabs, many of them uncontested. And going by most accounts, China, Russia and Saudi Arabia will easily secure a spot. Voting to fill up these spots happens through a secret ballot at the UN General Assembly in New York. And there's only one way a candidate can be defeated: when they receive less than 50% of the vote, which means less than 97 countries must vote in favor of them. A list of candidates that features countries like China, Russia, Saudi Arabia, Pakistan and Cuba was bound to create an uproar. Human rights campaigners are now pleading with countries to defeat these rights violators. One of the prominent voices is of the Geneva-based NGO UN Watch. They say this situation, listen to this, and I'm quoting, this situation is like allowing 5 convicted arsonists to join the fire brigade.
UN decided that the worst abusers should not be there. Okay, so that is a decision made by the UN, and sadly, too often that is not being observed. But those are the rules of the UN, and they should be observed. Finally, I want to make a very important point, is that we've come to a point now in 2020 where we've had now 14 years of elections since 2006. And sadly, too often, most of the worst abusers get elected. So what does that mean? It means that we have something called elections, and the result is that most likely, let's be honest here, most likely China, Russia, Cuba, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia will be elected next week. And the result is that those countries can go around the world and say, look at me, I have a badge of approval. I've been elected to the UN Human Rights Council, the world's highest human rights body. There were elections, we were elected. And that happens.
You heard it for yourself. The United Nations created a system to fight human rights abuses. But that system is now being hijacked by rights abusers. By the way, China was already on the UNHRC board. It wants a re-election now. Saudi Arabia was on the council in 2019. Russia, too, was a member nearly 4 years ago. And both of these countries, Russia and Saudi Arabia, are looking at a comeback. Thank you for watching Gravitas on WION's YouTube channel. If you want to stay up to date with what's happening around the world, then subscribe to our channel and don't forget to like and share. Thank you very much for watching WION. World is One.